And 1 second, we'll be all set.
We do see a message that says webinar is now streaming live on YouTube.
We're all set.
Okay. Good evening. Planning board is now in session. It's Monday, February 7th, 7 p.m. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. Signed into law on June 16th, 2021, this meeting will be conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted. People who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so by finding the meeting at www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. First item on the agenda is the Master Plan Committee update. Mrs. Luttrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Master Plan Committee is meeting on February 16th and will be reviewing the final 2 chapters. Also discussing the implementation plan, how to roll out the master plan, and then whether some small implementation committee should be utilized to keep people on track, and so the plan doesn't fall off the radar. But ultimately, that would be a recommendation from the Master Plan Committee to the Planning Board. So I ask that you all think about whether that's an avenue that we should take. And that's it.
And we're all reminded that this committee turns into a pumpkin on June 30th.
Yes, it does. We are hoping that we're not going to get near June 30th, but we should be done prior to that, hopefully.
Yeah, this is prime time for getting things done between now and June. So very pleased with the progress so far. Anybody questions, comments? Yeah, Monty.
Just a question, Mimi, around the implementation. Is that something that's been done before?
Well, there was a chapter in the plan before, but there was never any type of committee, and nobody was really following up.
Perfect. Thank you.
There was space created on the shelf in the planning department to put the last master plan. Next item on the agenda is a continued public hearing, 325 Turnpike Road. Ken's Foods, major site plan approval continued from September 27th, October 18th, November 15th, December 13th, January 10th, and January 24th. And also continued public hearing, 325 Turnpike Road, Ken's Foods expansion, special permit for lower impact development. Continued from those same dates, September 27th, October 18th, November 15th, December 13th, January 10th, and January 24th. We'll ask the town planner to give us the latest update on this public hearing.
Prior to the last planning board meeting, we did have a meeting with Fuss and O'Neill and the applicant team to get some test pits done. They had the test pits done, which verified some location of the existing underground structures that they're going to be adding on to. However, during that time, they found some additional issues downstream, which they had to figure out. And so they've requested an extension to the action deadline and continuation to the for the public hearings to February 28th. So that's just a photo showing
Sorry.
yeah. So they asked to be continued without discussion this evening. We did receive a revised submittal this afternoon. We didn't actually receive it. We received some indication that a revised submittal will be delivered soon. But that's their extension request and continuation request.
So currently, the approval period for both the major site plan and the special permit, that approval period is extended through February 11th. And our next meeting is 20,
February 28th.
is when?
Our next meeting is February 28th. So they asked to be continued to the 28th, and then we have another meeting on March 14th. So the action deadline would be for the planning board to vote would be March 18th, which is 4 days after the March 14th scheduled planning board meeting, if that's what happens.
Any questions or comments on that tonight? Anyone from the public?
We currently have
Sandy?
6 people in the attendees list.
So if nobody has anything, the appropriate action at this time would be to make a motion to grant the extension. And then if that passes, to continue the public hearings.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we grant the extension for 325 Turnpike Road, Ken's Food Extension Major Site Plan Approval, and for 325 Turnpike Road, Ken's Food Expansion Special Permit for LID for the approval period to be extended until March 18th, 2022, as requested by the applicant.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Morris, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Very good. Next thing to move would be to continue the public hearing to February 28th at 7:00, public hearings to February 28th at 7:05 p.m.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we continue the public hearing for 325 Turnpike Road, Ken's Food Expansion Major Site Plan Approval, and also the 325 Turnpike Road, Ken's Food Expansion Special Permit for LID to February 28th, 2022 at 7:05 p.m.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Morris, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Very good. Next item on the agenda is a continued public hearing. 200 Turnpike Road, snow removal / landscaping contractor facility, major site plan approval. Continued from November 15th, January 10th, January 24th. And also a continued public hearing for 200 Turnpike Road, snow removal, landscaping contractor facility, special permit for lower impact development. Also continued from November 15th, January 10th, and January 24th. We will ask the town planner to give us the update.
All right, so the applicant team's been working on preparing a revised submittal, which would be the second submission. Earlier last week, they did provide a submittal which they had to supplement to complete the information. And on Friday, they provided us a revised submittal, which is going to be reviewed tomorrow to make sure everything's there. Knowing that they were tight to the meeting for tonight, the applicant requested a continuation of the public hearings to February 28th, 2022 at 7:10 p.m. and have extend the time in which the board has to make a decision to April 15th, 2022. They recognize that there's a lot of work to do, so they were on board with us putting the action deadline a little bit further out there so that we wouldn't have to do an extension request from them every meeting. So the bottom line is they'd like to be continued to February 28th.
Do we have that application form for the screen?
Yes.
So it would continue the hearing to February 28th and the approval period to April 15th. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to
Grant,
grant the applicant's request to extend the approval period to April 15th, 2022.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we continue or grant the extension of the approval period for 200 Turnpike Road, snow removal landscaping contractor facility, major site plan approval, and also for the special permit LID for the same location to March 15th, 2022, as requested by the applicant.
I think you said
Andrew?
March. I think you said March 15th. I think it's April.
April. April 15th, sorry.
Sorry, second.
Motion's been made and seconded to extend the approval period. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, Morris, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
And now be appropriate to continue the public hearing to February 28th at 7:10.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we continue the public hearing for 200 Turnpike Road, snow removal landscaping contractor facility for major site plan approval, and also for the special permit for LID for the same location, that we move the public hearing or continue the public hearing to February 28th, 2022 at 7:10 p.m.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor, Morris, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Very good. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a discussion item. The MBTA communities will ask the town planner to start us off.
okay. As you may recall, last year, the state passed legislation called the Housing Choice Bill. And within that is a part where it requires communities that have certain transit proximities or commuter rail station in their town to come up with an MBTA community zoning district. And if you've had a chance to look through some of the information on the Dropbox, there's currently the DHCD is working on providing guidance on how communities can achieve that, and they're accepting comments and feedback on the program, I believe up and through the end of May. So the question is, who's responsible for MBTA communities? And I spoke with Sarah this evening, who's still managing the SHOPC meetings for me. And Colleen and I have both been attending the recent last few meetings. And it's my understanding that the MBTA communities goal is being handled by SHOPC at this point. Now, just a little background on it. Southboro is a MBTA community because we have a train station in town that's commuter rail. So the general requirements are that communities that have transit facilities provide a 50-acre piece of zoning, 50-acre zoning, like an overlay, that would allow for multi-family housing. Now, there's not specifically a affordable housing component to it. It's more of a density that they're looking for. And it's not that the town has to build those units, it's that the zone should allow it by right. And so the state, through the DHCD, has done calculations based on the number of housing units you have. Ours for 2020 census, I believe, is 3,700 housing units, slightly more than that. So the goal is to have 15 units per acre allowed by right in this area. And the minimum that they're allowing you, so if you have, and because we're a commuter rail, 15% of your housing units will determine the level of density you need. But the minimum threshold is 750 units are supposed to be allowed by right within this new zone that's created. So, it's difficult because if your train station, say, is near wetlands or public lands, you may not be able to achieve that because you can't count wetlands and areas like that towards your 50 acres. So it's my understanding that at least half of that 50 acres has to be within a half a mile of your commuter rail station, and that's what Southboro falls in. So again, it's my understanding that SHOPC is going to be moving forward on this. And the way that came about is that SHOPC's been in discussions and in researching whether 21 Highland Street, the old South Union School, would be a viable location for affordable housing. And in doing that, when this MBTA communities requirement came up, it was thought that perhaps this old school building being in close proximity would help create a zone, be part of this zone that is MBTA communities. So a subcommittee was formed called the 21 Highland Street. I believe it's SHOPC and CPC are working on researching different information about 21 Highland. And, should it be turned into housing by a developer? Should the town do it with assistance of a developer, et cetera? So there's a whole lot of information about that. But the bottom line is I think that SHOPC is spearheading this. I have to look a little bit deeper into the requirements, but in order to become compliant in the interim, there is a specific form that needs to be filled out. You have to have a meeting with the Board of Selectmen who review the information, certain criteria. Also, Town Council provided an advisory to the towns and cities that they work with. It's a 2-page document up on the Dropbox. I believe we posted it in the public packet where the agenda is posted for the public to see as well. So there's information similar to what I just talked about. The repercussion of not having a MBTA community zoning district established in your town restricts you from certain types of funding. It's my understanding that one of those funding avenues is the one-stop program, which we know that EDC and the Board of Selectmen are working on for research for the Route 9 corridor, for putting in public sewer. How do you handle that, and how do you enhance zoning down there to encourage mixed use and housing? So that's the ramification. And we have a meeting with Shopsy on Thursday where we'll be talking about this a little bit more, and I'll be able to solidify the approach. And I know that Joy and Jasinski and Sarah are planning to meet with the Board of Selectmen to talk about the warrant article that Shopsy's developing for, just lost my train of thought. For transferring CPC money that's designated to affordable housing directly to the Affordable Housing Trust. Right now, the CPC holds that money, and Shopsy would have to demonstrate a specific project in order to release that money. But I digress. So that's MBTA communities kind of in a nutshell. I encourage you to look at some of the links on mass.gov. It's very simple, explanatory. There's just a lot of information that you have to kind of tie together. That's all I have done. One long sentence, as usual. I'm sorry.
So to recap a little, did you, the date that the town of Southboro has to submit a response is when?
May 5th. By May
Okay,
5th, there's an online form that has to be completed. Shopsy is aware of this. Town council is aware of it. I'm going to work with Shopsy and also follow up with Board of Selectmen, make them aware, that this is happening, and just make sure that I, put a little reminder out there that it's going on.
and so far, at this point, there's no action required by the planning board or the planning department, is that right?
That's my understanding. Shopsy actually reports to Board of Selectmen. We assist Shopsy as best as we can by helping them administer their meetings and such. But it's really a housing initiative, and Shopsy is probably the best place for that to happen. They have a very good board committee right now, full with members who are very knowledgeable and of an array of expertise and background. And Jesse Stein happens to be a member of Shopsy as well. So we have some good overlap in that direction to be informed about it.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Jesse,
Hi, I just wanted to draw a point of distinction regarding the 21 Highland site. So Karina had mentioned that in the context of the MBTA communities situation. And the 21 Highland use and the possibility of that site being utilized for affordable housing is, it is correct that the MBTA communities was one of the items discussed in those meetings. I just wanted to mention the that whole initiative is happening sort of regardless of or incidentally to the MBTA communities. The 21 Highland is not actually directly linked to the MBTA communities at this point. So 21 Highland, actually, there are ways we can use that site for affordable housing that do not involve any zoning changes at all, because it falls into a historical adaptive reuse. The chair of that committee, Tom Bizical, always is reminding me that we're not charged with advocating for one particular avenue, and that we're really charged with just providing the selectmen with a range of options for how that site could be used for affordable housing. But my own opinion, and this is just my own opinion, is that the path of least resistance for the use of that site for affordable housing is adaptive reuse using the historical, and that would not require any zoning changes at all. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah, Mrs. Latrell?
Yes, thank you. In my opinion, I think that this subject warrants a townwide discussion with several town entities, Planning Board, Board of Selectmen, SHOPC, and EDC, because it could have huge ramifications in the town. And as Karina said, it does not, there's no affordability in the statute at all. So it's just it's a housing bylaw, not affordable housing bylaw or statute. And the comment period ends on March 15th. And I think Southborough is at a disadvantage for a couple of reasons. As Karina said, half the district, half of the 50 acres has to be within a half a mile of the train station. And that area has a river. It's many older neighborhoods, which the housing in which is affordable by Southborough standards, although not deed restricted. In encouraging redevelopment of that area would create housing that's probably would be far more expensive than what's already there. So I think it's counterproductive and not helpful to Southborough. Additionally, I went to a couple webinars last week on this, and they talked about how they got to the 50 acres by doing a radius, a half-mile radius around a station would be 500 acres. So, the 50 would only be 10%. However, Southborough's train station is right on the town line. So we only have 250 acres in that radius, which is in Southborough. So it's 25% of that for Southborough. So in my opinion, I think that we should comment to the state that this would have huge ramifications for the town. Additionally, I think that we need to discuss, and as I said, I think many town boards together, whether the benefits outweigh the negative impacts of this, whether the benefits of these grants outweigh the negative impacts of potentially having 750 more units and redeveloping older neighborhoods. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Sorry, I agree with Mamie a lot on what she just said. And I was wondering, is it possible for us to seek like town council opinion on maybe we can get possibly exempted because we don't have public sewer? I mean, this seems to me like zoning that's really more geared toward, from a public health perspective, a public system as opposed to a septic system. Just a thought. Thanks.
Andrew?
Yeah, on a little bit different topic because Karina was talking about the CPC. She was correct. As I think everyone knows, I'm the chairman of the CPC. We have in the past held on, or say not released the funds for the Affordable Housing Trust because we've been waiting for a project to come forth. There are a lot of very strict guidelines for what the funds, the CPC funds, can be used for affordable housing. So we saw it as our charge on the CPC to make sure that the project met those criteria. So I just wanted to put that out there in this public forum, that that has been the stance of the CPC in the past. We haven't been trying to hold on to those or delay anything. We're just waiting for a project to come before us that meets the guidelines before they can be released. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Back to you, Mimi.
I just, well, as I said, I went to a couple webinars last week, and septic did come up, and there's no exemption for towns that have septic. They're thinking that developers will build their own private wastewater facilities.
Yeah, the presence of the river so close to the train station, and then the restrictions from the Wetlands Protection Act and the Rivers Act really does limit what can actually be done there, whether it's housing or anything else.
Maybe in the webinars, I attended a couple myself, but it never really came up. The approach that you can, do you think that if you can't do it near the station, that they would push, they being the DHCD, push for a village area? In other words, that was always something in the background. It was, commuters rail station and you're near the train station, but there's also some language about being near, like a downtown village area or something like that. Did you come across that? Any discussion on that in your webinars?
Yes, if you can prove that you cannot do it within the half a mile, you can propose that overlay somewhere else.
I thought I heard that too, yeah.
Any more questions or comments on this?
Is there any specific action that the planning board would like me to take moving forward on this topic? At this point?
No, it sounds like it's in motion and you're attending, so. Go ahead, Mimi.
So the planning board doesn't want to have any input in this huge zoning statute?
We probably would, but is it still unfolding based on what you were saying, Karina?
Well, Mimi is right in the fact that there's a public comment period that the DHCD is taking feedback on, which ends, like you said, I think March 15th. I thought it was later, but you're probably right. I do know that in a topic coming down further in the agenda, that the planning board is invited to attend the Board of Selectmen's meeting on February 15th regarding, just remind me, Don, what was the topic we were going there for?
Trees.
Oh, the trees, of
Bylaw.
course. How could I forget? I'm sorry. My mind is. So for the trees, to discuss that process and the tree warden or tree board and such, perhaps I could reach out if planning board members are going to be at that meeting. I could reach out and ask that this topic also be, start the discussion a little bit to get some feedback from the Board of Selectmen with the planning board present. It's up to you. I know what Mimi's saying, that might be a way to do it, since if, 3 or more members are there.
Yeah, I
It does
agree.
all that.
Selectmen would have to agree to have this item on their agenda.
Yes, and I could follow up with them if you'd like me to pursue that.
Yes.
Okay.
One other thing that you might do is to travel across the room to the conservation and ask them how this would apply to the location of our train station near the river. In other words, they would be able to show on a map or in an email the distance from the river and the banks of the river and any other associated wetlands, the regulated distance.
The buffers, yeah,
Yeah,
okay. All right, so I'll do two things. I'll reach out to the Board of Selectmen and ask them if they could put the MBTA communities onto the February 14th Board of Selectmen agenda, so that if the planning board members, I can post one meeting as a joint meeting, are there to discuss the trees. Maybe they can also spend a few minutes on this. And number two, I'll follow up with conservation to see what they have near the train station restrictions.
anything else? Any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is a discussion item, St. Mark's Street relocation / zoning map update. This is, I'll let the town planner explain this, focusing in on the map.
Okay, so it was brought to my attention that the relocation of the intersection of St. Mark's Street and Marlborough Road, which is just north of the library, where there's been movement there with a potential pocket park, et cetera, and the realignment of that intersection that the DPW is working on. So it came to my attention that it would possibly require planning board review based on Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 81G, that says that you need to come to the planning board if you're changing any roadway locations that have gone through subdivision approval or other, so that it can be tracked on the official town map. And not only that, but to ensure that grading, drainage, and most likely cross-section of the roadway meets town standards when it's being rebuilt or reconstructed. So in corresponding with the DPW with Karen Galligan, we weren't clear on what the official map would be. And there's reference to other Mass General Law, Section 81E as well. So we, just to get some kind of understanding, we contacted the town clerk and asked his opinion of what the official map is. And it's his opinion that it's the zoning map. And that's what we initially thought when we started pursuing this. And so I had let Mark Purple know and Lisa Braccio, Chair of the Board of Selectmen, and Karen Galligan know that, this is coming up. We think it's supposed to go before the planning board for those reasons. And then, like I said, we asked Jim Hegarty, town clerk, for his opinion. And he said the 2006 zoning map that was certified is the official map, according to his understanding. So that's where we stand. We're not sure how to proceed on this. Perhaps reach out to town council to verify and confirm Jim Hegarty's understanding of what is the official map.
There are a whole lot of other maps out there. I know the DPW has maps of all the streets, meets and bounds and all that stuff. But those are more internal and to the DPW and more engineering type drawings. The zoning map has been used for a long, long time. And I don't think anybody is aware of any better product that would be considered the official map. Now, in 2006, the map was updated, and one of the updates included a change in the boundary line between Southborough and Westboro, where Westboro ceded several acres to Southborough. It was because of a subdivision, Fiddle Neck Road, that area. So the map update included a revision of the town boundary, but also included revisions to roadways that had occurred since the previous map was updated. And the St. Mark's relocation isn't the only one that's occurred since 2006. If you guys remember, Washington Street over at EMC and Dell was relocated in the town of Southboro, and that did go through the planning board as part of the site plan. It was a component of the site plan that road would be relocated, and it was approved by the planning board. So it would seem that it's appropriate in this case that we not only review and hopefully approve the relocation of St. Mark Street, but also update the zoning map to include the other new roadways or revisions. 16-year-old map, things have changed in that time, and it's time to update it anyways. So I guess we would, because the town is doing the St. Mark's Street as opposed to a developer with a site plan, we might need a little guidance from town council as to which entity, if it's the town administrator or the DPW, that submits the application, if it is an application, which I think it would be, to the planning board. We would hold a public hearing, I guess, and then take the appropriate action. So
Also,
it would
John,
seem that then, go ahead.
the other thing is, what threshold of actual relocation? Because there are instances where, for example, as part of this same roadway improvements project that VHB has provided the town with, the DPW, there's an intersection of Deerfoot Road that's being slightly realigned. It's taking it from kind of a skewed angle to a kind of a 90-degree angle. And although it's not a major change, what is the threshold of when a road, how much of a roadway has to change in order for this to be triggered? Is another question I have, because the general law, no public way shall be laid out, altered, relocated, or discontinued if such laying out, alteration, relocation, or discontinue is not in accordance with such official map as it then appears, unless proposed laying out, alteration, have been referred to the planning board established under section 81A, and such board has reported thereon or has allowed 45 days to elapse without submitting. So after a city or town has adopted an official map, no person shall open a way for public use except as provided in the subdivision control law, unless location of such way is in accordance with such official map, blah, blah, blah. And in either case, the grading, surfacing, and drainage of such way has been approved by such board. So, there are some instances where it's just a minor intersection change of maybe 10 feet or whatever to realign it. So that's also my question.
So it would appear the next step would be to combine those questions, ask the town planner to submit those to the town council for his advice on how to proceed.
Sounds good.
Unless, go ahead, Andrew.
No, I said, sounds good.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just curious if our town code, I understand the reference to Mass General Law. Just seem to recall from previous meetings that the Board of Selectmen has the jurisdiction over streets, names of streets, things of that nature. And I'm just wondering if anybody knows where in the town code we get into who has jurisdiction over the streets.
No, I think you're right, Jesse. The selectmen do have jurisdiction over existing public ways. And if that conflicts with chapter 41, section 81G, that says it has to go through the planning board. Any relocation, alteration, discontinuance, it has to go through the planning board. So even though selectmen have the jurisdiction, I guess in this case, they've authorized that relocation. It still has to go through the planning board, and by doing so would allow the official map to be altered, to be updated. So,
And Jesse, I think if you think of it like a roadway acceptance, we have a roadway acceptance policy where the Board of Selectmen take the main lead, but it's required that it comes to planning board for, review of the as-built of the road, like.
Right, but that's, and Don had mentioned another example, I think earlier.
Washington Street.
Where, but if I'm not mistaken, those were both in the cases of site plan reviews, in the context of site plan reviews. Is this, did I miss something? Is this in the context of a site plan?
No, it's not.
Okay.
We don't see these very often, if at all. So it's obvious that we're in need of some guidance as to how to proceed from here. But it's clear in section 81G that what's going on at St. Mark's Street needs to go through the planning board. So if there's nothing else, we'll ask the town planner if she's got clear guidance on how to move forward. You all set,
Marty
Karina?
has a question.
What?
Yeah, so I actually wasn't aware of these, and I looked at the whole Deerfoot flag thing, and there's a bunch of big trees that they want to remove. So those are scenic streets. This comes back to the tree warden thing, and again, it's like, I won't say it. So I would agree that I think that planning board should have oversight here. So I hope that legal can opine on this for us.
All set? Anyone else? Move on to the next item, which is a discussion item, tree warden / tree board. Karina.
Okay. So at the last Board of Selectmen's meeting, the tree warden submitted his resignation. It's my understanding that with the influx of the potential number of scenic roads based on the 1978 warrant article number 41, which in essence added, I think, about 40 additional scenic roads, and the pending scenic road bylaw that the planning board is currently working on, which would increase that as well. And the concern of, jurisdiction of taking a tree down that's hazardous in their opinion. I think he felt like he might be a little, he couldn't perform the role as effectively as he thinks he should. So I believe that's partially in reading the resignation letters. And Karen Galligan also provided the Board of Selectmen with a memo reflecting that. So I reached out to Board of Selectmen Chair and Mark Purple, as I was instructed at the last planning board meeting, to see if they were willing to set up a independent separate meeting with a planning board rep, a Board of Selectmen rep, Karen Galligan, to discuss how we go forward without a tree warden, with a tree warden, with tree board possibly, at the same time addressing the concerns of the tree removals in town. Lisa Brascio, Chair of the Board of Selectmen, responded, discussed it with the Board of Selectmen, and suggested that the planning board maybe have a joint meeting, asking the planning board to have a joint meeting at their next meeting on February 15th. And they were also aware that we would be discussing this topic this evening. I made sure that the Board of Selectmen had that information. So if they wanted to speak to this tonight, they also could, or hear what we have to say as far as this topic and the tree bylaw. So if the planning board would like, I can anticipate preparing an agenda for a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen on that Tuesday evening, February 15th. That's all I have, Don.
Okay,
At this
looks
point.
like it looks like if the Board of Selectmen will put us on their agenda, part of their agenda as a joint meeting, that the five of us, or at least three of the five of us, could attend. If the overall question at this point is, how is the town of Southboro going to manage its public trees? There's several different ways. There's having a tree warden who is qualified, which would normally be an arborist, or a tree board, or both, a tree warden and a tree board. Do we have those as town employees, as town citizens, so on? Combination of things, but to move forward, we need to get informed as to what the best way to do this is. And other towns do it with tree wardens, do it with tree boards, tree committees, and seem to have success with it. And we've been working on this for a while, and now with the resignation of the tree warden and the discussion with the DPW director, which included transferring the management of the trees to the planning department. I don't know how many other planning boards or departments have that in the state, but to have that as a possible suggestion seems something that would really need to be looked into and talked about. So, Karina, you said that you would work on a more detailed agenda so that we could maybe start to move in one direction relative to how the town is going to manage its trees. We're going to have a warrant article that would create a code, a section in the code. Are we going to have a policy, which we have, and it's been revised? Thought we had agreement, and that fell apart. So need to get this thing in motion. And the decisions have to be somewhat informed so that we know what the best options are moving forward. Just before the meeting, I just Googled tree boards, and this came up. It's a one-page, I guess 2-page thing from the state on tree boards from the DCR website. It's kind of helpful, but it helps us get a little bit more informed as to what might be the best path for the town of Southborough. Any questions, comments? Anybody else?
Also, I reached out to the chair of the Public Works Planning Board to see if they had any input or feedback they were to this topic. And then also at the Board of Selectmen's meeting on the 15th, Town Council, it's my understanding Town Council will also be present for this topic.
I have a tentative plans for a CPC meeting on the 15th, so I don't know if I'll be able to make it, but just want to give you that heads up.
Wow, a lot of meetings on the 15th. Any other questions or comments on the tree situation relative to the tree warden and how we're going to move forward? If not, we'll move on to the next item.
Don, there is a hand raised in the public attendees list.
Okay.
Kevin Farrington. Colleen's gonna connect him. Oh, did he not raise his hand? Did he take his hand down? At this time, I'd also like to point out that if you're using the chat room, it's no longer, it's not policy to use that for questions. You have to raise your hand if you're a public attendee to be heard by the planning board. So Tim, if you want to re-ask your question, raise your hand. Otherwise, we don't use the chat room.
There, it's Debbie Demuria.
Oh, it's Debbie. Okay.
58 Flag Road. I'm using Kevin's computer. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I have a question, and I'm wondering whether, since the planning board is sort of working in conjunction with the DPW, and the DPW has given planning board some authority or is looking to work with you, would it be possible to use the DPW board and convert it to a tree board, Public Works Planning Board, that is, and convert it to a tree board? So, I mean, I noticed that the Public Works Planning Board has a particular remit, but really hasn't met much over the last couple of years. They haven't met at all in 2022. And they only met one time in 2021. And in 2020 and 2019, they met only 2 times. And even in 2018, the chair of Public Works Planning Board at that time had asked whether or not the board should become defunct. And so it's not clear to me what that mission is, but it's, you know, I would very much support a tree board. And I'm wondering whether there's an opportunity to convert the Public Works Planning Board into a tree board. And I think that the idea might be that instead of being reactive to, you know, where we're at with the trees right now, is to be a little more proactive and work with the planning board for consolidated tree hearings, to review tree reports, to put together an annual plan, and really address not only the removal of trees, which I think everybody is really focused on, but start thinking about planting trees, which is really what we ought to be doing as a tree city. I was just wondering what your opinion might be.
I want to right up front say and remind everybody that the DPW does not answer in any way to the planning board or the planning department. And as far as I know, without the permission, the DPW answers to the Board of Selectmen. And without the permission of or any transfer of authority, any discussions of who does what relative to the DPW goes through the Board of Selectmen. And you want to make sure that that's clear, that this board, the planning board and the planning department have no intention of sticking our nose into or into taking any authority that we don't have. That is an interesting idea, but again, it would have to be presented or studied, looked at by the DPW and the Board of Selectmen as maybe one way of managing the public trees. And again, it was just today that the town planner sent an email to the chair of the Public Works Planning Board, letting him know that we're having this discussion, not really asking any action items, but also asking within that email was a question as to what, if anything, that board has to do with the management of the trees in the town. So we want to make sure that we include them, but we also know that they don't answer to us. They only advise, and they're appointed. So I wanted to say that up front. So go ahead, Mrs. Luttrell.
Just to clarify, the Public Works Planning Board is not appointed by the Board of Selectmen. It's appointed by the moderator, and the planning board has 2 appointments, 3 from the moderator and 2 from the planning board. So I don't know how the moderator would fit into trees, but it's an interesting idea.
The thing from the DCR, it has a lot of different angles, but one thing it says tips for successful tree boards and committees, and try to build a board that's representative of the diversity of your community. Look for members with some area of expertise, and the first item is arborist. Second one is communication specialist and grant writer, etc. Make sure in particular that you have some members with knowledge of trees, forestry, and arboriculture, which, seems to be common sense that if you're going to have a tree board, you'd have people on there that would have some knowledge of trees. So, anyone else?
We
So I
currently
guess-
have 7 attendees, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 attendees, no hands raised.
I guess if the board doesn't mind or has a better suggestion, which there probably is, that I would work with the town planner to draft some items that we would want to discuss if we do have that joint meeting with the selectmen on the 15th.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I can attend, so I'd like to go to that.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is Scenic Road proposed warrant article. We've received information from different sources, town clerk, and others relative to the scenic roads. And I suggested, I think it was at the last meeting, or maybe that I would myself would put together more than one way to propose this warrant article. I've started to work on it, but I got called away late last week on something else, and that's behind me now, and I'm able to get back into it. So at some point, hopefully be sending the board members and the town planner a draft of different ways to accomplish what we're trying to do, which is to identify all public ways that have been approved since April 10th, 1978 to the date of this year's town meeting as to be scenic roads in the town of Southborough. How exactly the best way to do that is something that we'll be looking at and get. We talked this over with town council, actually, Karina and I, along with in a meeting, and Mimi was there with the town council, who indicated to keep it simple, but also there's some different ways of doing this, some better than the others. So take a look at that. Any questions or comments on that?
Don, was the agenda item for tree bylaw proposed warrant article? We kind of skipped that. Was that, do we need to do anything on that or take it up after the scenic road?
No, I thought we were just talking about that, where we were going to work together with put together a. Oh,
So
okay.
that
I
was
guess we
both
did. Yeah,
together.
yeah. I guess we did skip that. So if
Because
there's no other
Mimi-
questions on scenic road, we'll go to the tree bylaw that was drafted by Mrs. Latrell.
Didn't want to forget Mimi.
All right. Did you want to speak first, Karina, on this, or just switch it right over to the expert?
Switch it to the expert.
This is Latrell.
So we have the draft that's in the Dropbox and combined with all the comments that I've received. I guess pending the outcome of the joint meeting with the select board on February 15th on what direction we want to take with the tree warden or tree board, would change what we want to have in the tree bylaw. And still, the questions are how much authority the planning board wants to have, whether we want to cover not just public shade trees, but tree clearing on sites. And there's a chapter in there on tree planting, and so a discussion on having a tree fund and how that gets funded are questions for this board moving forward.
Any other questions, comments on that?
I have a quick question. The appointment of the tree warden, pardon my ignorance, but how is that handled presently?
With the Board of Selectmen is my understanding.
Okay, so
Yeah, that's correct.
because that's written in red, if I'm reading this correct. I thought that indicated that there was a change. Thank you.
Well, if one of the decisions moving forward by the group is to not have a tree warden, then that part would have to get changed. Or have a tree warden, but somehow describe his or her authority. Any other questions, comments on that? Tree bylaw? Move on to the next item. Discussion item, Arpa funds. Karina.
So at the last planning board meeting, Marnie, due to a pretty stiff schedule, asked to resign from the ARPA committee, and Mimi Championing yet another forefront is taking the role of representing the planning board at the ARPA committee. We received an email recently from the Board of Selectmen asking for boards and committees to come up with a wish list of maybe 4 items that they feel ARPA funds could be used for and initiatives that they want to work on. The town is receiving 3.1 million in ARPA funds that has been allocated. And it's my understanding that if you don't use those funds by 2026, that they get rescinded. And Mimi, you can correct me if I'm wrong, or Marnie, based on what you know. So the committee would like any kind of responses of wish list items by February 15th, so the committee can provide a timely recommendation to the Board of Selectmen so that they can review and consider where that money could be expended in order to help the town of Southborough. Mimi, do you have anything to add to that, or Marnie?
Well, the first thing I want to say is Marnie's PowerPoint presentation has been complimented across the board. Anytime ARPA comes up, everyone says how fabulous your PowerPoint presentation was, Marnie. Even the consultant was blown away. So kudos to you. So yes, if anyone can think of some things, it's pretty broad what can be on the wish list. I have one thing on the wish list from the chair, a sidewalk from across the causeway from Central Street to White Bagley. And I know that the Trails Committee wants a sidewalk from Central Street across Route 30 to the new Peninsula Trail. So those two things may work together. So if there are 3 other things that the board can think of for me to present at the ARPA meeting, we've been meeting once a week.
I also know that things like digitizing files and such, because it's considered some kind of like keeping historic information. I was talking to the building commissioner and she was thinking along those lines as well. If we could get some funding for improving the the digitized files for the town. And I think Dawn mentioned a potential sidewalk.
Yeah.
Project as well.
I would say infrastructure, and I'm thinking specifically Main Street, like near Morrow's, some sort of capital investment down there to make sure that we sustain the people who already have businesses.
Marnie, when
And
you say infrastructure, you mean sewer?
Sewer and drainage.
Okay.
Drainage. For sure.
Yeah, drainage is probably but it's a priority over sewer. I think just
So-
trying to figure that out.
As far as like a public system goes, just my opinion, I think Route 9 would be a priority. That's definitely been a shortcoming for filling commercial vacancies on Route 9. I've heard from developers, and a big part of the reason Route 9 is underutilized. Thanks.
I also think, Mimi, that in the implementation goals of the master plan update, if there are any items there that we could think about on the forefront that might apply to what the ARPA funds intent is. And we could look through that list as well. It's hard to think of it all at once, but.
Yeah, I know one of the major goals is sidewalks and connectivity in general, sidewalks, trails, bike lanes. Those are a huge theme in master
Getting people
plan committee
outside.
goals.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so if anybody has ideas like that, it would be very helpful if you just pop them a couple bullets in an email and send them to me, and then I could put them all together, or Colleen could put them together, and I could send around a final list, and we could just rank them and then take the top 4 and submit those. If
Right.
you're-
Just wanted to notice that the chair of the Arpa committee is here, Andrea Hamilton. So everyone knows who's the chair of the committee.
Welcome, welcome, Andrea. Any other questions or comments on ARPA?
If you think of anything, just pop me an email, and then I will send it around and get a priority, and then we can submit from the planning board something back to the ARPA committee. Of course, Mimi, you'll be privy to it anyway, since you're on the committee. Thanks.
And I'm going to nag you every week.
And did you say that the ARPA funds are leaning toward projects that would be infrastructure?
You're on
They're not leaning anywhere now. We're in a fact-finding mission, getting ideas, and our next meeting, we're going to figure out how to prioritize ideas, and we're in an information gathering phase currently.
Okay. Any other questions, comments on ARPA? Move on to the next discussion item, one-stop grant application / expression of interest. Karina.
So the EDC is continuing their initiative to obtain another one-stop grant for their Route 9 research and looking to enhance business along Route 9. So the fiscal year 23 one-stop grant starts with asking for kind of a letter of intent, an expression of interest, which is the form that I provided you, that the Marika, the EDC coordinator, had filled out, and they would like to submit that soon. But it's not the final end all. It's just letting the state know that that the town of Southboro is pursuing a community one-stop for growth program grant. The final full application closes at the beginning of June. And in talking to Marika, she indicated that even though it's kind of a tight deadline now, looking for feedback on this, that she would welcome any feedback from the planning board up until that point, and so that she can incorporate any considerations that the planning board has on this one-stop grant application. So I was hoping that everybody would have a chance to just look through these several pages, and if you see anything that doesn't make sense or anything that you want added, we could relay that to the EDC coordinator. Just note that we did send out the agenda to the EDC and also the EDC coordinator, and she also forwarded along and reminded them that we were having this discussion tonight. If anyone from the EDC wanted to join the discussion, explain, ask any questions, answer questions. I see that Rob Anderson, he's the chair of the EDC, is in the attendees list, and he has his hand raised. Just so that you're aware of that, Don.
Let's hear from Rob. Good evening.
Hi.
Welcome
thank
back.
you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. I think one of the things that I want to make clear being here is this is just a first step. The expression of interest allows us to let the state know that we're interested in a grant. It's not the final application. So we're hoping that there is some evolution, give and take, and collaboration between each and every board so that we can get the best application possible so that we do receive that grant. I think that collaboration was very successful in the passing of the downtown zoning. And we're hoping that the same thing happens here. One of the reasons why I had in particular been encouraging Marika to submit an expression of interest first is because there are lots of state entities that take a look at that expression of interest and provide feedback. That feedback can be very informative and help craft the better application. I think, frankly, submitting any type of application without full support by the select board, capital, the planning board is frankly somewhat ridiculous. But getting the expression of interest is a little bit time sensitive. A lot of the things brought up on the Route 9 corridor, such as, business recruitment, business retention, potential some zoning improvements to help attract people, setting the stage for further infrastructure improvements can be very useful from this particular grant. So from the EDC's perspective, we welcome any and all feedback from the planning board. We're hopeful that this expression of interest can be submitted sooner so we can get better feedback from the state. I do know 351 cities and towns, 13 grants in the community one stop. The closer you put to the end of that expression of interest window, probably the less intensive and less profitable that feedback would be. So that's just a little bit of an overview from the EDC's perspective. Thank you so much for giving me a moment to speak. I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Marnie.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I appreciate it. So I think what the biggest glaring thing from my perspective is really, again, can you get some sort of additional under your bullets on the P17, you talk really about the zoning, and I appreciate the zoning issues, but I think the point that Jesse raised earlier around the sewer is probably a higher priority to infrastructure. And is that more requesting funding for some sort of survey to be done in addition to hiring a consultant around zoning, because I really don't think you should do zoning. And it's exactly what happened with the downtown district is I'd rather have them both complementary and try to get grants for both versus just do one in a silo.
We actually, Marnie, thanks for the question. We actually have a grant from Energy and Environmental Affairs for a wastewater study and analysis on Route 9. So that is something that the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board, will be signing off hopefully at their next meeting. The fact that we can work jointly for the zoning and the wastewater infrastructure and having both working in parallel, I think is hugely useful for us. I do think that the zoning can perhaps be improved slightly. But that's where the consultant and the analysis will occur so that if there are suggested changes, those are things that can be reflected in what happens on Route 9, such as better infrastructure and water and sewer, which the other grant should tell us. So I do think right now, because we got that EEA grant, going after some feedback from consultants on the zoning, does make sense.
And just a clarity, Rob, so you said that the grant's been approved, so you have the funding for that?
The EEA has
Yes.
Given us the money, but the select board has to approve the taking of the money.
Okay, thank you.
That's happening on their next meeting.
Great, thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Morris.
And Rob, did you say that the wastewater study and analysis on Route 9 includes water servers or just wastewater disposal?
I'd have to go back. I don't have it up in front of me. But
Okay.
we're hoping that the consultants that we bring on board will answer all of the questions that we have laid out in our application. So if it's just wastewater, I think it's both, but I don't have that at my fingertips. My apologies.
Okay. Thanks.
Anyone else? Questions, comments? Thanks a lot, Rob, for attending. Very helpful.
Oh, wait, I think Mimi has her hand up.
Mrs. Littrow.
Yes, thank you. I have a question, a comment, or a question, a concern, and a thought. So my question is the streamlining the permitting process. What is the problem that's trying to be solved there? Because I know that the planning board a few years ago did have a consultant look at our site plan approval process and was found to be in line with all the other towns that they studied. And from my experience on the board, the permitting goes very quickly when the proponents submit complete applications and submit timely resubmissions and answers to the consultants' questions, and the slowdown is on the proponent end and not on the town end. My concern is what zoning is being looked at on Route 9. I think we have very, very small commercial zone, and I'm concerned that we're going to allow too much housing on Route 9 if we open the whole thing up to mixed use. But that being said, my thought, after just discussing the MBTA communities, that perhaps we could look at a portion of Route 9 to be mixed use at the high density of the required of the MBTA communities, because only half of the zone has to be within a half a mile of the community or of the station. So those are my three things.
Yeah, and I was taking a couple of notes, so hopefully I hit upon all three of them. Without sounding like sometimes grant writing is a bit of a sales job, I do know that the state, in particular the governor's office and DHCD, views streamlined permitting as one of those key terms and key words that they really want to strive towards. I think the fact that Southboro aligns well with its neighbors is frankly beyond a doubt. We do. And the thing that I think the streamlined permitting in this particular context is that although we're good, we can always be better. And that's one of the things we're striving for as a town. So I'm not sure if I would necessarily view that as any type of criticism or anything on the planning board, just simply a way of aligning ourselves with the thoughts from the state and saying that we're striving to get better. I do think that the comments that you made about overwhelming zoning on Route 9 makes sense. I think that's where the consultants and the analysis will be useful, because as we all know, Route 9, you can only go one direction before you have to pull a U-turn. So it might be that consultant's analysis gives us the best area for that potential mixed use and might have some more suggestions on way to align with the MBTA. And so as we go through the process, what I would actively encourage the planning board to do, if we do get the consultant, to participate as much as possible on that feedback, because it's going to be very useful if we get the grant, coming up with the best suggestions for moving it forward. So I think I hit the streamlining, the MBT and housing zone. Was there a third one that I missed?
You got it all, Rob.
Yeah, yes. Excellent. Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, we'll move on to the next item.
John, just a quick question. Is there any follow-up on that, or was that it? I know they want to submit the application. Is that it for us?
On the EDC side, I did take a couple of notes, and I think what I might do is talk with Marika about the streamlining the permitting, and perhaps see if there's another way to frame it. One that might just say, kind of fit some of the feelings that I wanted to say, not that it was necessarily could be viewed as a criticism because it's not done, but striving to be better. I think that's the one thing that I can bring back. But if there wasn't anything hugely out of line, I'm just hoping that we have the support of the planning board.
We'll move on to the next item. Other business properly before the board. Planners report, project updates, Arbor Day proclamation, FY23 budget.
All right, just a few quick things here. Just FYI, we received the official recording clerk policy, effective date July 1st, 2022. Board of Selectmen approved it on January 4th. So we'll still be working on planning board's approach for that. Lost my glasses. Just to point out that we did receive an email from the Board of Selectmen on Thursday, February 3rd, that the chat function in Zoom will not be used anymore during public hearings, to better reflect how it would be in-person meeting as well. So if anyone has any questions on that, let me know, whether it's the public or the planning board, but we haven't been doing that for a while. So just wanted to reiterate that. The Board of Selectmen will be declaring an Arbor Day for Southboro in one of the upcoming Board of Selectmen meetings. The date that we selected was April 29th, 2022, to align itself with the federal Arbor Day that's on the calendars. If anybody has any information for trees and such, just want to point out that we do have a couple of projects that were conditioned to provide trees for the DPW. So if we can make anything work with that on that day, we'll see if we can make that happen. Elections are coming up, and town clerk has provided annual town election information for May 10th, 2022, deadlines and such. If somebody needs that information, let me know. I can send it to you. The Board of Selectmen is drafting a dry Centennial committee for the town of Southboro for 2027. Dawn and I have spoken about this in the past, different things that can happen for that. So they're working on a committee for that as well. And I believe that's all I have for this evening.
The FY23 budget item,
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
could you ask, earlier we talked about updating the map, the zoning map,
Yes.
and, we don't do that in-house, as far as I know. We hire a consultant to produce that map with certain hard software that I guess becomes the property of the town. Karina, could you look into back in 2006, how that was done and who paid for it. If it came out of the selectmen's budget, general fund, planning, I forget. But if it's our responsibility to update that zoning map, then we should put it in our budget to hire a consultant to get that done.
Absolutely. I'll do that. I'll follow up and I'll provide you, the planning board members, with an email, and we can collaborate at the next meeting.
Anything else on that? Approval of minutes is the next item, January 24th.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes from January 24th, 2022 as written.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Mrs. Latrell.
One little thing, line 159. Should that be every few years instead of very few years?
Yes.
Anyone else? I had one. It was around, I don't have it in front of me, but it was around line, there's a couple, there was one near line 150, I think, or 155. And I think it said something about Karina referenced a Massachusetts general law, which I guess refers to, and it says conservation. It makes it sound like the general law refers specifically to the town of Southboro. Do you see that, Kate?
Hang on, let me pull it up.
This is Ms. Quinn explained the MGL Scenic Roads refers to the Conservation Commission, the Southborough Historical Commission, and the Planning Board evaluate whether existing roads should be deemed scenic. Line 156, Kate.
Okay.
Does that, when you read that, does that sound like the Mass General Law refers to the Southborough Historical?
It does a little bit.
Okay, do you want me to tweak it with Karina?
Yes.
Okay.
Could you read the next sentence also?
Mr. Morris one?
I don't have it in front of me. I know there was a sentence either before or after that one that I missed the point.
Mr. Morris agreed that it only applied to public streets and felt it would be manageable to write a warrant article every few years to deem any new roads created as scenic.
How about the sentence before that? I wish I had the minutes. I've taken up too much time here.
It's all right. Ms. Quinn explained MGL refers to the
Well,
conservation, no,
The one before, the sentence before that.
before that one. He advised that a similar warrant article be drafted, but the intent of MGL alludes to streets in existence, so a 2022 draft bylaw would not designate future roads.
I'm good.
Okay.
Anybody else? Motion's been made and seconded. Some suggestions were made. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Morris, yes.
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell, yeah.
Houlihan, yes.
Okay, the next meeting is February 28th. And I think the public can see from this agenda the wide range of programs that are managed or shared managed by the town planner's office, the planning department, that involves no one else or involves interaction with other boards and committees. It's just really an indicator of how much the planning department is asked to do and how much they get accomplished. even more now that we have Colleen.
Mhm.
Any other questions or comments?
I'd just like to add that it's super helpful that the planning board members are so engaged in, talking to me, being on other boards and committees as representatives, and then, coming back to the planning board and helping to keep, keeping us all informed and interconnected so that we kind of have a sense of what's going on all around, not just tunnel vision. So it's super helpful that the planning board is so engaged. So I just want to say I really appreciate that. It makes my job a lot easier. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything
Motion
else?
to adjourn?
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Morris, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes?
Latrell, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Thank you all. See you later.
Good night. Thanks,
Thanks.
everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Great
Thank
night.
you.
Hey,